26. That is how many Meta employees are now suing the company in federal court, alleging an algorithm scored them for termination while they were in delivery rooms, hospital wards, and funeral homes. According to the complaint, one of them, a Meta research scientist 7 months into her second pregnancy, was notified she had been selected for termination one day before her water broke. She gave birth 2 days later. Her severance paperwork, the complaint says, was still processing. The system that produced her name, the lawsuit alleges, calculated her value to the company that week at zero. This did not happen at a company you've never heard of. Meta is worth roughly $1.5 trillion, run by a man who spent the past year publicly promising a leaner, more technically focused workforce, Mark Zuckerberg. In May of 2026, his company cut about 8,000 jobs, 10% of its total, in a round it called performance-based, using a mix of internal tools that included an AI platform called MetaMate. Software may already grade your own output at work the same way. Two questions matter here, and neither gets answered until the end. First, once a machine learns to treat a delivery room like a missed deadline, what stops it from doing that to you? A federal judge already called this case more than noise, using the phrase serious questions going to the merits. So here's the second question. When he rules in a matter of days, what does he actually decide? Start with the mechanism, because the mechanism is the whole story. According to the complaint, all 26 plaintiffs had taken, requested, or received approval for protected medical or family leave within the 24 months before Meta's May layoff announcement. 8 were women on pregnancy or maternity leave. 4 were men who had taken parental leave. 1 was a woman on bereavement leave after a death in her family. So how does a system built to reward output end up punishing a hospital stay? The lawsuit's answer is precise. The performance scoring system used to help rank employees for the layoff measured output over a rolling window of time and allegedly did not pause that window for legally protected absence. A person on 12 weeks of maternity leave did not get 12 weeks removed from the calculation. She got 12 weeks of silence, and the system read that silence as failure. Meta's public response has been consistent and short. A company spokesperson said workforce management and organizational decisions were and are made by people, not artificial intelligence. Meta has also said the round targeted low performers company-wide, not any protected group specifically. That is a legally careful sentence worth sitting with for a moment. The lawsuit does not actually claim a machine fired anyone with zero human involvement. So what does the lawsuit actually claim? It claims that humans built a scoring system, trusted its output, and let it quietly encode a bias against the exact employees the Pregnancy Discrimination Act and the Family and Medical Leave Act were written to protect. Intent does not have to be malicious for an outcome to be discriminatory. That distinction is exactly what a jury will eventually be asked to decide. If this feels like new territory, it is worth knowing that it is not. Decades before anyone wrote a line of code for a performance algorithm, a Michigan telephone operator named Noreen Hulteen took maternity leave from AT&T in the late 1960s after a difficult delivery that required surgery. Under AT&T's own disability policy at the time, an employee out with a broken leg or a heart condition received full paid leave credited toward retirement. Hulteen, out for pregnancy, received paid credit for only 30 days of hers. If your own employer offers medical leave today, this is the case law still sitting underneath that policy. Where did the rest of her leave go? It simply vanished from her file, roughly 210 days by later court estimates. Nobody corrected it, because at the time, nobody was required to. Decades later, when Hulteen retired in 1994, her pension was still calculated using a formula that silently subtracted those missing days. She sued, and the case reached the Supreme Court. In May of 2009, the justices ruled 7-2 in AT&T's favor, holding that pregnancy leave taken before the 1978 Pregnancy Discrimination Act could still legally be discounted, even decades later, even at the moment of retirement. A penalty written into a company file in the 1960s followed a woman for roughly 30 years and reduced her retirement income the day she finally collected it. What does it take for a company to notice a mistake like that on its own? Apparently nothing but a lawsuit. The system simply never forgot, and it never forgave. Why did the country's highest court agree to that logic in the first place? That was not even the first time it had. In December of 1976, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 in General Electric Company versus Gilbert that a company disability plan could lawfully exclude pregnancy from coverage altogether. Chief Justice William Rehnquist wrote that pregnancy was significantly different from ordinary covered disabilities, in part because it was, in his words, often a voluntarily undertaken and desired condition. The backlash was loud enough that Congress overturned the ruling within 2 years, passing the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978. The law changed in 1978. The instinct behind the machinery, human or digital, did not. In January of 2025, Zuckerberg sent staff a memo warning that the coming year would be intense, writing, "I've decided to raise the bar on performance management and move out low performers faster." That round cut about 5% of Meta's workforce, roughly 3,600 people, selected by human managers using existing review scores. So what actually changed between that round and this one? 16 months later, the mechanism itself had changed. The May 2026 round was more than double the size, and according to the lawsuit, selection had shifted from a manager's judgment call to a machine-generated ranking that few employees, and apparently few managers, could fully explain. Raising the bar on performance in 2025 became, by 2026, outsourcing the bar entirely to a system that could not tell a low performer from a woman who had just given birth. This was never purely an AI problem. Software just made an old problem faster and harder to see. Who is actually checking any of this? Ifeoma Ajunwa, a law professor at Emory University who has spent over a decade researching automated hiring and employment systems, has warned that companies deploying algorithmic scoring tools face no meaningful external audit requirement. A 1970s clerk excluding pregnancy, days from a pension ledger, left a paper trail a lawyer could eventually find and litigate for decades. A 2026 ranking algorithm processing keystrokes, messages, and AI tool usage across tens of thousands of employees, possibly including you, can produce the same exclusion in milliseconds. Regulators in at least one major jurisdiction have already reached a conclusion about tools like this. Under the European Union's AI Act, systems used to make employment decisions, including hiring, promotion, and termination, are classified as high risk, a category requiring documented bias testing and an audit trail before deployment. If you work for a company that does business in Europe, a tool like this would need that testing before it ever touched your file. At the federal level in the United States, where these particular layoffs took place, no comparable requirement exists, though a patchwork of state and city laws aimed at automated employment tools has begun to fill the gap. Which brings the story to right now, to this month. What could a court still do with the terminations already scheduled? On July 15, 2026, the 26 plaintiffs filed suit in the Northern District of California, proceeding anonymously as Does 1 through 26, citing violations that ran from the Family and Medical Leave Act to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They asked for an emergency order blocking Meta from finalizing the terminations before trial, arguing that once the separations became final on July 22nd, the harm would be irreversible. Judge William Orrick, an Obama appointee sitting in Oakland, denied that emergency request, but he did not dismiss the case. His written order acknowledged the lawsuit raised, in his own words, serious questions going to the merits, even while ruling that the plaintiffs had not yet cleared the higher bar required to freeze the company's actions outright. He singled out 4 plaintiffs on employer-sponsored visas for special concern, ordering Meta to formally explain, in writing, the specific reason each was selected. The complaint itself runs 71 pages. A full preliminary injunction hearing is now scheduled for August 24th, 2026. Here is the answer to the first question. What actually stops a machine from treating a delivery room like a missed deadline? Right now, nothing does. The scientist whose water broke was not, the plaintiffs argue, a flaw the system failed to catch. According to the complaint, she was exactly what it was built to produce, because nobody had ever taught it that a hospital stay and a missed deadline should be scored differently. As of this recording, the system has not been ordered to stop. Here is the answer to the second question, the one about the judge. As of this recording, he has not ruled. The hearing on August 24th will decide whether an employer's scoring software gets treated by the law as a neutral tool or as a liability the company built and is now responsible for. If the plaintiffs win, could it force Meta and any company like it to prove a human actually reviewed every name a ranking algorithm produces before anyone gets fired because of it? Whatever he decides will not undo what already happened to these 26 people, but it will decide whether the next 26 ever get the chance to sue at all. This will not stay only Meta's story. In a 2025 survey of more than 1,300 managers by ResumeBuilder.com, 91% said they already use AI to help assess employee performance, and in a separate July 2026 survey by ResumeTemplates.com, 59% of managers said they use AI specifically to help decide who gets laid off. But did any of those surveys ask what the software does with a maternity leave, a chemotherapy schedule, or a funeral? Every time your own calendar logs a sick day, a doctor's appointment, or family leave that a ranking model was never taught to interpret as protected, the same quiet arithmetic that once followed Noreen Hulteen for 30 years may already be running on you. 26 was the number of people who sued. 1 day was the gap between a notification and a birth. And for the system that produced that notification, there was no gap at all. There was only a number, and the number said 0.